Hello and good evening, everyone. This is a virtual stakeholders meeting sponsored by the City of Bowie. My name is Joe Minert. I'm the City of Bowie Planning Director, and we're reviewing tonight the dash-in proposal for redevelopment of the Applebee's restaurant site. And this is a detailed site plan application, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But the property is located at the northwest corner of US 301 and Heritage Boulevard, and in the Bowie Gateway Center. I'd like to go over a couple of the ground rules for participation. This is a city-sponsored stakeholders meeting, and the purpose of the meeting is really to allow participants to ask questions and hopefully get answers to those questions from the development team that will be presenting the plans. That way, if you want to prepare yourselves and attend the city hearings, which are coming up in the next few months, you'll have better information to participate. The ground rules for the meeting tonight are that all participants are in the listen only mode. We will use the question and answer function as the means of preparing the questions, which will either be answered by the development team or myself. We do not respond to raised hands, so please just use the Q&A function if you have a particular question. This meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be placed on the city's YouTube webpage for anyone to go back and use as a reference. The only participants in tonight's meeting are those who have registered in advance, and we will be in touch with everyone if there's any follow-up necessary. At this point, what I'd like to do is just briefly talk about what a detailed site plan is. Detailed site plan is a construction type plan that shows the buildings, the parking, the landscaping, circulation, building elevations, all of the amenities and things that you would see on a site as it is developed. This type of plan is, if it meets the requirements for approval, the applicant is entitled to an approval. So it's not an up or down vote. And I wanted to also mention that the city doesn't really play a role in bringing particular users to these properties. That's entirely handled as a private property matter through the real estate industry. So with those comments of introduction, and I'd be happy to get into it later if there are any need for clarification about those things, but I will introduce Mr. Daniel Lynch, who is the representative of Dash-In Food Stores, and they will make a presentation, and that will be followed by questions. So Dan, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Joe, and thanks for setting up this meeting and working with us on this application. As Joe indicated, today we're here to talk about a detailed site plan for a proposed dash-in that is to be located on the north side of Heritage Boulevard at its intersection with US 301. This property is currently developed with an Applebee's restaurant, and our proposal calls for that Applebee's restaurant to be raised and for a gas station to be constructed in its place. The applicant in this matter is Dash-In Food Stores, Inc. And before I get into my presentation with regard to the actual detailed site plan, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Tony Williams, who's with Dash-In Food Stores, Inc., which is a subsidiary of the Wills Group. He can tell you a little bit about the applicant and what they have done in Prince George's County, as well as what they have done in the area. Tony, you can take it away.
Here we go. Thank you, Dan.
Sure.
Appreciate the introduction. As Dan indicated, my name is Tony Williams. I happen to be the senior real estate manager for the Wills Group. And as Dan indicated, the applicant in this matter is Dash-In Food Stores, of whom is an affiliate of the Wills Group. We are a local family-owned company that has been in business here for 95 years. We operate under the names of Dash-In Convenience Stores, Splash-In Eco Car Wash, and SMO Motor Fuels. Prince George's County is one of our core areas of operation. Next. As can be seen on this slide, we are heavily involved in the communities where we operate. We are highly philanthropic, and we continue to give back to our communities that we serve. Next. This slide indicates exactly what I've been saying, is that the Wills Group is ranked 11th on the Washington Business Journal's 2020 corporate philanthropy list. Here's a list of locations that our organization has redeveloped in the past few years. I will say that we enjoy each one of these projects. The intent was to work very hard at redeveloping these older existing sites into new modern facilities. This slide is a recent list of real estate developments we've completed or that are in the process of upgrading right now. As you can see, most of our investment in Prince George's County is redevelopment and modernization of existing sites. 4100 Crane Highway, which is the site we're talking about tonight, is one of the few new stores that we are contemplating developing. Next. Here's a slide that kind of shows the development that we've undertaken in Prince George's County. This is an example of our site at 509 Old Branch Ave in Clinton, Maryland, the before and after. Here's another example at 8228 Woodyard Road in Clinton, Maryland, which is now opened. Here's a before and after example of an improved redevelopment in Upper Marlboro. As you can see, we are proposing an upgraded facility with upscale architecture similar to the store we are proposing at 4100 Crane Highway that we will be discussing tonight. Our new stores also have an upscale interior with full service kitchens, made to order fresh food, healthy menu options, as well as grab and go prepared food made on premise. And last but not least, we were awarded the Best Food Service Launch Award by Convenience Store Decisions in 2021.
Thank you, Tony. Now, the plan that you see in front of you now is the detailed site plan that we filed with Park and Planning. Excuse me, Tony, if you could just stop your video. Stop your video, Tony. And Mayor, if you can share your screen. Thank you. Again, this is the detailed site plan that we filed with Park and Planning. It's currently with Park and Planning in the stage called pre-review. During that stage, Park and Planning makes preliminary comments on the site plan as well as the other site plan, other site plan materials in order to make a determination as to whether they're sufficient. Once they make that determination, the application is accepted and then it starts through the normal review process. As you can see on this plan, the building is the large, almost square object where Mayor is currently locating her cursor. That's a 4,500 square foot convenience store. To the south of that is a proposed car wash. And then to the east are 6 multi-product dispensers under cover of canopy. We'll be locating parking spaces just to the north of the car wash. Parking spaces will all be located on the south, north, and east side of the convenience store building. And then there will also be a row of parking located along the northern property line. Access to the site from Heritage Boulevard will be via a private right-of-way. Mayor, if you could just skip to the next plan. This is a copy of our landscape plan. We'll be installing a 4.7 buffer along our northern property line and that includes 20 feet of landscaping. Along the eastern property line, we're required to install a 4.2 landscape strip, which is 10 feet in width. However, we're providing 15 feet along that frontage. Along the southern property line, we're providing a 4.2 landscape strip, which would be 10 feet in width. We'll also be in compliance with 4.3 of the landscape manual, which requires interior plantings. Mayor, if you can go on to the next slide. This is the elevation for the front of the building that was submitted with the detailed site plan package. As you'll note, we've incorporated a mix of building materials into the design, including Hardy Boy steel panels. This is a very modern looking site, much different than what we've constructed on other sites in Prince George's County, as well as the other surrounding jurisdictions. There's very large windows out front. We really tried to make this as welcoming to our customers as possible. And again, this is the front of the building that will be facing US 301. The next slide, the rear of the building. The next slide. This is the south side of the building, which will be facing Heritage Boulevard. Again, we've included a lot of architectural detail on this to create visual interest. The north, excuse me, Mayor, the next slide. This is the north side of the building. Again, it's a visible side. We add a lot of different building materials, again, to create interest, to make it look very, very attractive. And this is the elevation that we submitted for our canopy. And this elevation that we submitted is for the wall that will be located around our dumpsters. Again, what we've done with this is we use the brick material that's included in the main building and incorporated that into the wall. This elevation is of the splash-in car wash, which will be located on the south side of the property. This car wash, excuse me, right there. The upper left elevation is the elevation that will be facing Heritage Boulevard. To the right of that, with the exit sign, that is the elevation that will be facing 301. The lower left elevation is the elevation that will be facing the rear of the property. And then in the lower right-hand corner is the elevation that will be facing north and facing our convenience store building. And Mayor, why don't you just take it back to the site plan? Or landscape plan. Landscape plan is probably better. Thank you. And with that, again, as Joe indicated, I indicated we've submitted this to for review to Park and Planning. The gas station on this property is a permitted use. We have requested with Park and Planning that the application be reviewed under the old zoning ordinance and under the old zone, which is our right. We had the option of proceeding under the new zoning ordinance, and again, even under the new zoning ordinance, the use is permitted. But because we are so far along in our design and our site plans, we decided that for scheduling reasons, we decided we'd just move forward with the existing plans and proceed under the old zoning ordinance. Again, this application has been filed for peer review. It's not accepted yet. Once accepted, we anticipate it will be before the planning board within 70 days. So I'm anticipating we'll be before the planning board in either October or November of this year. With that, that is the nature of this application. I, Mira, as well as Mr. Williams, we're all happy to answer any questions or address any comments you have with regard to this application. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dan, and thank you, panelists, for the presentations. At this point, we're going to open the meeting for questions from stakeholders. Again, I'm Joe Meinert. I'm the planning director for the city of Bowie, and I moderate these meetings and I will read the questions as they come in, any questions that come in through the Q&A. So simply type the question in and we will try to get answers, either myself or the development team. While you're thinking of your questions, I did want to mention the city's review dates. The city has a public hearing scheduled for the Bowie Advisory Planning Board on the 26th of July. And then this matter will come up for a city council public hearing in September, on Tuesday, the 6th of September. So those are the two opportunities that you would have at the city level to participate during the hearing process. And again, I wanted to mention that the city's role in this is advisory to the county. Dan had mentioned that he's expecting a county planning board date later this year, October or November, and it's the county, Prince George's County Planning Board, that makes the decision on the plan. A detailed site plan, just as to reiterate what I said before, is the type of plan that's not really a up or down vote. It's something that is intended to allow for public comment on the proposed development, looking for compliance with the county zoning ordinance design guidelines. The city also has some design guidelines that we apply when we review these cases. But if all of the requirements are met, the applicant is entitled to approval at the detailed site plan stage. So it's not an up or down vote. It's not a question of whether Applebee's will stay on the site or not. And I just wanted to make that clear. And I also wanted to reiterate what the city's role is. We're just advising and making a recommendation from the city council to the county planning board. Now, we had one question come in, and I did receive a couple of questions by email, so I can go ahead and work through the questions and we'll try to get answers. The first question that has been asked of the stakeholders is this final, that this structure is a go? And that's a question to the development team. Understand the question, is this final, that this structure is a go?
No, this is, I mean, the development of this site with the gas station, car wash, and the food and beverage store, convenience store will occur. The only question is will occur in the form that we are proposing, and that is, you know, in terms of the architecture, will it look like what we are proposing? Will the layout be what we are proposing? You know, we spent a lot of time coming up with this layout, coming up with the architecture, and based upon the experience that I have in dealing with the folks at Park and Planning, I can almost guarantee you that the building will look something similar to what we showed you tonight. As Tony indicated in his presentation, that's the exact building architecture that we proposed at the site located at the corner of Marlboro Pike and 301 in Upper Marlboro, and the staff had very little, if any, comments with regard to the architecture. Now, there might be some tweaking with regard to the overall site, but you know, in terms of the overall project, it's a go. It really just comes down to probably some minor change to the site, addressing some staff comments. But I think, you know, what you're seeing here today, 90% of it will occur.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Dan. I'm going to ask a couple of the questions that came to me by email. And I believe these are questions that the city should be able to answer. So the first one is, what incentives, if any, are given to businesses to come to Bowie? And I can answer that. The city does have an economic development incentive fund, which is a small amount of money, which our economic development director has at his disposal. But as to answer the question, on a routine basis, the city does not provide incentives to attract businesses to Bowie. We just do our best efforts to make information available about the city and try to assist in any way we can, but it's a private sector decision. The second question that was asked by email was, must these businesses contribute any funding to area infrastructure, schools, or police, for example? And the answer that I would give to that, and I just know this from being the planning director for the city, is that when developments go through the adequate public facilities review, that's usually at the step that's before this. In other words, when a property is in for subdivision to be divided up into lots, that's typically when the county will assess adequate public facilities. So they'll look at traffic studies, they'll look at road improvements, there'll be conditions placed on the project. And I believe at some point in the past, and it's been a long time since the Bowie Gateway Center has been through the preliminary plan of subdivision process, but there were requirements that they had to meet with respect to infrastructure. Since it's not a residential project, there's no school impact in this instance. And in the police situation, there really is not an actual funding requirement for the police. If this was a residential subdivision, there's a impact fee that the county charges, which the funds go to the police department and the fire department. But in this case, there would not be that because it's not a residential development. So I will move on to the next question that came in through the Q&A, and I'd encourage everyone who's participating, please type your questions into the Q&A while we're talking. But the next question is for the development team, and that is, are there any changes to the entrance and exit to the current Truest Bank? Dan, can you answer that?
I don't believe there'll be any significant changes. There might be some improvements, but Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong. Are we proposing any additional changes to that entrance?
We are not. There's a very minor adjustment on the curb, but the bank will still maintain the same entrance and exit off of Heritage Boulevard.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And at this point, I don't see any more questions. I would encourage you if you, okay, here's one here. While we're talking, I would encourage all participants to type in their questions in the Q&A. The question to the development team is, would the developer consider adding EV charging stations to the site? Dan?
That's something that my client is looking at very, very carefully. And they're making a decision as to what stations they operate or proposing to operate where EV charging stations would be necessary. And they believe that they really could offer something to the public. But they've also found that, for instance, on a lot of neighborhood sites, and I wouldn't know if I necessarily classify this as a neighborhood site, but on other sites that are located more in neighborhoods, they probably wouldn't get any use because most people, and I've seen this in my own experience, will charge the car either at work or charge a car when they get home. They're not going to go to a gas station and sit in the parking lot for 30 minutes just to charge their car. Again, I could be wrong, but that's the direction we're heading. And, my client is studying this and studying the issue because, they want, if they're going to make the investment with EV charging stations, they want to make sure that they're making that investment in the appropriate stations that they operate.
Dan, just to follow up on that from me, I think I'm aware that the county council approved something that required gas stations to have EV charging stations. Would that apply in this instance?
Does not apply in this instance because this site is not subject to the criteria set forth in the zoning ordinance that requires EV charging stations. So we're not subject to that requirement.
Okay, so if it's done, it will be voluntary.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. We did have a couple other questions come in. Again, a question about the entrance. Is the only entrance off of Heritage Boulevard?
Yes, it is.
Okay, next question is, what renewable energy sources will be used?
We're not proposing any renewable energy sources on the site.
Okay, that's good to know. A few more questions have come in. We had a comment not supporting another convenience store and gas station project. That's just a comment. Another question is about the intersection of 301 and Heritage Boulevard. And the question is about the leveled roadway. And I don't quite understand what that means about the leveled roadway at the intersection of 301 and Heritage Boulevard. I believe that maybe there's a dip in the roadway there. I don't believe this particular developer would be required to do anything about that, because what we're looking at tonight is the detailed site plan for the workings of their site only, internal to the property. That's an off-site improvement, and the Maryland State Highway Administration ought to be contacted about that. Next question is, what walkability design is there for this project?
The only thing that we are proposing, I believe we're tying our site into the existing sidewalks located along Heritage Boulevard. There will also be crosswalks across any of our drive aisles where we anticipate there'll be physical walking traffic, excuse me. But again, it's going to be limited to that.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Couple of questions similar. Why do you think we need another gas station? We already have 3 gas stations, and the other person said we already have 4 gas stations. Why is one necessary? I know it's not a requirement that you produce a market study for the county's approval as part of this process, but is there any way you could give us any thinking as to your decision to locate in this area?
My client would have done a market study as part of their analysis of this site and made a determination that there was, that there was a need for an additional gas station. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that this is a highly visible site located on US 301, very close to 50 and the entrance and exit ramps from 50.
Right, that's logical. I know in some types of development applications, not a detailed site plan, but if it was, for example, a special exception type use, there may be a requirement that the county has that a market study had to be submitted as part of the application, and then that's reviewed publicly as part of the criteria for getting approved on a site. And that's, in those instances, under a special exception type project, the use is not automatically permitted. It has to go through some criteria in order to be judged to be acceptable on a given site. So in those instances, the county does require a marketing study to be submitted. But any of these types of decisions that are made are private decisions made by the developer itself, and they're obviously going to do those types of studies for their own information.
Yeah, and Joe, and I want everyone to keep in mind that there's going to be a significant investment made in this site in terms of not just the lease on the property, but also the physical improvements made to the property. So they don't do this lightly. They spend a lot of time figuring out whether or not that there's a market to be served, and they feel that there is.
That's understood. Question came up about whether the developer is committed to planting native tree species. And I know I've been looking at the landscaping plan, and it's not 100% native in terms of the shade trees and the shrubs. So I'd like to know if the developer would be committed to planting all those 100% native tree species.
Well, as you know, there's a requirement on the landscape manual, and we'll be, complying with what is required in the landscape manual. If you have any, if during this review you have any additional suggestions, we'll try to incorporate those into the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question really is related to the use. That we need fine dining in Bowie. It's just a comment. More restaurants, better shopping. So we're capturing a lot of the comments that are similar from a lot of the participants now that are just, I guess, interested in seeing other uses for the site, but particularly restaurant uses. But here's a question. The next area of topics would be, how ecologically sound is your proposed gas station? What steps are you willing to take to curtail the fossil fuel emissions impact on the surrounding residential communities?
We'll be complying with MDE standards on this site. There's a phase 1 and phase 2 mitigation, not mitigation, but standards that are implemented on this site that we'll be complying with. So we'll be complying with state law. And obviously, if there's any laws in place arising from the EPA, we'll comply with those. But normally it's MDE that controls the standards with regard to gas stations in the state of Maryland. And
Okay.
just let me also correct myself. It's a phase 1 and phase 2 vapor recovery system, and those basically are in place at the pump. And then there's another one that's located away from the pumps that recovers much of the vapors as required to under MDE standards.
Is there a state permit required that you have to go through and demonstrate that you have the correct equipment or meet the requirements?
Now we're getting into the weeds, and I cannot say whether there's a state permit. I believe there is, but I'm not really the person to answer that question. Mira may know better than I.
I don't recall off the top of my head exactly on the permitting piece. Aside from all the typical permits you get for fuel and gas, and health department reviews everything. So there are a lot of reviews completed, and the health department does take a look at everything.
Okay, thank you, Mira. One of the comments was about the marketing study, and as we mentioned, that's something that's a private proprietary piece of information, so it's not public information in this instance. And the applicant here obviously feels there is a market and feels that it would serve the immediate community. So I think that answers the question that was asked about that. Another question related to road improvements. Is there any consideration to the traffic congestion on and off of Heritage Boulevard and the short duration light at 301? Dan, do you have any feel for that, the traffic impact of this proposal?
Joe?
Yes. Could you reply again, Dan? Okay. That looks like we're at the end of the list of questions. I don't know if anyone else out there has any additional questions. Well, one that just came in says, where can we view the proposed site plan for this project? That would be something that the city, we're capturing this meeting on a recording. We're going to place the recording on the city's YouTube channel, so you could go back and reference that. There will also be a staff report that the planning department will produce in about a week or so for the public hearing on the 26th of July. So there will be copies of the plan available as part of that staff report. And if you want to contact our office, I'd be happy to share that. And I don't know if Dan, if you all have anything else you want to offer with respect to that. It looks like Dan's screen is frozen up a little bit. Mira, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And I think, Joe, you kind of covered the available places that they can get a site plan. And certainly I think we can work with the city if there's, copies needed to provide as necessary.
Okay. Right. I think that we've kind of gone through the questions, and usually with these stakeholder meetings, when we have sort of a repetition of the same topic again, we really ask people that are in the meeting to see if they have any other questions and things that were not addressed previously in the meeting. And when we run out of topics to cover, we're basically at the end of the meeting. So I guess I want to emphasize again that this is a detailed site plan review. It's really, the purpose of it is to look at the workings of the use on the property, looking at the building, the design of the building, the access to within the site, looking at landscaping, looking at the amenities and things, the trash pickup areas, things like that, to try to come up with the best possible site design. So if there's a way to improve the design so that it functions better, or if there's some issues related to those design elements, those are the things that are talked about during a detailed site plan review. And if all of the requirements of the county are met, all the design standards are met, the applicant is entitled to an approval of a detailed site plan. So I had mentioned earlier that this is not an up or down vote on whether Applebee's should stay or whether Dash Inn should come to the site. That's not a question that's on the table. A detailed site plan review is really the last step in the process before a developer will go in and obtain building permits. And so it's really to show compliance with all of the county's design standards for site development. And with that wrap up, I don't know, Dan, if you want to make if you like to make a follow-up statement or closing statement.
Joe,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I got kicked out for some reason.
Okay, yeah, I was just kind of summing up, Dan, I mentioned earlier also that the city has a public hearing coming up at the Advisory Planning Board on the 26th of July. Also, a city council public hearing will be September 6th. So those are the two opportunities that people would have to participate and make their comments known at the hearing. But I wanted to ask if there was anything that you could, if you wanted to follow up at the end and make a closing statement.
No, I just thank everyone for coming out tonight. Again, I understand some of the concerns with regard to, people desiring some other type of use on this property. I would note that there are 2 closed restaurants on the south side of Heritage Boulevard. And there have been other restaurants that have closed probably over the past 5 or 6 years. So I understand the desire for additional restaurants, additional retail, but the bottom line is that there have been restaurants and have been retail that has closed. And, so we saw this as an opportunity to develop this site with the gas station, which we think will be successful on this site. But again, you're welcome to come to the Advisory Planning Board meeting. And we also look forward to seeing you at the City Council meeting in September. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Dan, and thank you to your development team for presenting tonight. If anyone on this call would like to get in touch with me at the Bowie Planning Department, please feel free to contact me. I can provide information to you that we have on file, and hopefully you will attempt to get the staff report, which should be out about a week before that July 26th meeting. So at this point, I'd like to thank everyone for participating tonight. We hope to see you again. And have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.